A very warm welcome to Manchester Fashion Institute's What's Next event series. There's a few housekeeping rules we need to highlight first. If you can all mute your audio mic and turn off your videos, that'd be great. Following today's presentation, there'll be opportunity to ask questions. So if you can type your questions into the chat board throughout the presentation, we'll come back to those at the end and answer them then. So I'll begin. This is the fourth event of our class of 2020 What's Next series, and I'm delighted to welcome Katie Greenyer, who's Creative Talent and Network Director at Pentland Brands. Katie's talk will reflect on what it takes to succeed, and this is an inspirational story about resilience and positivity. And Katie's going to talk about how a positive approach can influence, innovate and empower, reflecting on some of the challenges and opportunities that have helped her to develop her distinctive style and creative insight. And as one of the most respected and influential people in the industry, she speaks with much authority on that. Katie believes passionately in the value of design education and is ambassador for creative opportunity and new design talent. She also holds the position of world president of the Textile Institute, is a Cordwainer liveryman with Freedom of the City of London. That sounds really exciting, Katie. And a mentor for Graduate Fashion Week. As Creative Talent and Network Director at Pentland Brands, she continues to manage the creative direction of Red or Dead, while leading a global design team that generates campaigns for some of the world's best loved sports, fashion, and outdoor brands. So a reminder to please mute your microphones and turn off your cameras, and I'll hand over now to Katie.
Hi, thanks, Jo. Everyone always makes me sound really good, which I quite like. So what does it take? I'm not really sure myself sometimes. I think that sometimes when I think about it, I wonder how I got to my position, and I do still have imposter syndrome. But thank you for joining me today, and I'll show you how I did do it. So I've always had an absolute passion for fashion. I love colour, I love print. I've always had this most odd affinity to anything that's a bit bright, really. My mum always said that I was a snazzy dresser from a very early age, and that's me on the left. Always wore a bonnet. I actually have a famous story where we used to go to Wales every summer, and I would always buy a Welsh bonnet and then wear it until it fell apart, really, and wouldn't take it off. And so, yeah, I love colour, I love print, I love just, I believe in the power of colour, how it makes me feel each day. So this is my dad. I actually call him Frankie Fraser. I've always called him Frankie Fraser since he told me a story about the craze in Victoria Park in London. And my dad, I'm very fortunate that my dad is a graphic designer, and he's now 81 and he's still a graphic designer, but I wanted to be him. He used to have a drawing board in our lounge, so that when he got back late from work, he could carry on. This is in the days pre-computers. And I always wanted, I sat underneath and I pretended to be him. One day I took the scalpel off the top of his desk and I dropped it into my leg. And he came over and he said, "What are you doing using my tools? No one's told you how to use those tools, so you shouldn't touch anything that you can't use properly." And at that point in time, I thought, well, if you're not going to be able to use the tools and you can't use them properly, then you drop them in your leg, you need to make sure that you are doing stuff to the best of your ability. So I really wanted to use the tools, and I really wanted to learn how to be a graphic designer. And that's sort of how it started. I had this real, I suppose I wanted to be Frankie Fraser. My dad is still a designer, and he's obviously 81, and I feel really lucky that I still am able to have those conversations with him, and it's kept him really young. This is my mum, Jacquie. She didn't want me to be a designer. She wanted me to be a librarian or a PA. She was absolutely, she was devastated when she found out that I really wanted to go to art school. My dad never had a normal job. In terms of, he'd never worked from 9 to 5. He was always late home, and the dinner was always in the dog. So in terms of like when my mum was sort of talking to me about career aspirations, yeah, design never fitted really high up on her priority. She wanted me to do something really stable. So I went to Colchester School of Art and Design, and I did a general art and design 2-year, and I loved it because you could do everything. You could do ceramics, you could do graphics, you could do fine art, you could do print, you could do textiles. And that's when I found out that I really liked textiles, and I really liked painting massive, really, really big size paintings. So started doing these massive size paintings, went to Liverpool School of Art, and it sort of just, I loved it at Liverpool. It's my favourite city in the world, and I just loved everything about it. So when I was at Liverpool, we used to call the window cleaner Squinty Totty because he was just so gorgeous to look at. So I called my business Squinty Totty. I left Liverpool and I got a grant from the Princess Youth Business Trust, and this is Prince Charles buying one of my paintings when I first started up. And this inspired me to actually think, well, really, really love selling work, and I really love creating work. And I needed to make money because I have really expensive taste. So my brother was an accountant in London, and he basically used to bring back all the magazines. And I opened this magazine one day and I saw these leggings that Red or Dead had done, and they had puppies and goldfish and birds on. And I just thought, that's the aesthetic that I love. I love it because they're bright, they're colourful. And I thought, well, I want to work for Red or Dead. So I went to London and I found out where the offices for Red or Dead were, and I stalked Wayne Hemingway, who's this gentleman here in the beginning. And I said, I waited outside and I said, I really, really want to work for Red or Dead. And he said, everyone wants to work for Red or Dead. And I said, but I really do. And he said, if you do, then I need to find someone mad in England. That was it. He got in his car, slammed his door, went. And I was like, oh, that doesn't help me. I went to Oxford Street and I came up the steps of Oxford Street and I was going to do a wee bit of shopping. And there was this man, Stanley Green, and he was standing at the top with this big placard that said, less passion for less protein, less fish, cheese and peas, and you must be a virgin on your wedding night. And I was like, oh my God, he is slightly mad. So I brought his 12p booklet. I then got some photographs of him. I put them into Boots for the hour development because we didn't have digital cameras there, waited the hour, and then went back to Wembley and sat back outside for Wayne. Wayne then came outside because the secretary had told him that the receptionist said, I'm back. And I showed him my photos and he said, well, you better come in. And that's when I started my life at Red or Dead. So then I went to, I suppose, just doing different briefs. He would say what the theme was, and I would just go all out for the theme. So whether that be housewife hell, mad cow disease, like tartan, when EasyJet started making all their staff wear orange, and just all of these different stories. And it was about storytelling, and the storytelling enabled front page news. I suppose the biggest, claim in terms of front page news was this whole thing we did about these buildings were put up for priority buildings, and one of them was Trellick Tower, which was one of the worst council estates in London, and it was called Housewife Hell. And so I did all these different prints and graphics about Wedgwood plates coming alive and then sort of starting to going crazy in these council flats. And this was when I became the sick face of British fashion. But my other passion, it is about humour, but my other passion is always sending up brand names. I send up myself all the time. but I just love the whole idea of actually making something funny. And at one point I thought that I wanted to work on the Sunday Sport, just coming up with different headlines. So my career took a bit of a funny turn because I really wanted to work in Paris. And so I wrote to all the different design companies in Paris and said, I will be at your studio at this date, at this time. If it's inconvenient, please telephone and let me know. Well, obviously no one telephoned and let me know. So I then booked myself on a Sega bus trip, which was like £69 return to Paris. And when I got to Colchester bus station, I was met with this sea of grey hair on the bus. And I didn't quite realise that Sega was for the over 50s. But they let me on, and it wasn't a full bus. So they let me on, and I arrived in Paris with all my newfound mates. And each day they would drop me off at my first appointment. My first appointment was at I was at Yves Saint Laurent, and I was really, really nervous. And obviously, no one had written back, and they didn't really know I was coming. But I blagged it. So I went in and I said, I've got an appointment at 11 o'clock with Yves Saint Laurent, and I'm a designer, and I've brought my portfolio. And basically, they chucked me out. My next appointment was with Christian Lacroix, and but they were like 3 hours in between each appointment because I had to get over with my portfolio. I literally had everything in my portfolio, and I didn't know how to I suppose, edit at all at that point. And so I then went to Christian Lacroix's studio, and he just arrived as I just arrived, and he let me in. And he basically said, come in. I went into the design studio, and he started going through all my work with all the designers in the studio. And then he asked me to stay, and he bought half my portfolio. So I ended up working in Paris. I phoned my mum and said, I'm staying in Paris. I'm not coming back. I went to see Margaret on the Sega bus just to make sure that she knew I was all right. And that was it. I was there. I was living in a bedsit. I think what happened then was that I stayed in Paris, and my mum used to phone me every Sunday. And one Sunday, my dad phoned me and said, could I think about coming home? Because we've just found out that Jacquie, mum, has got cancer, and she's not going to live very long. And so I came home. And I suppose it changed my trajectory, but it was the best thing that I ever did, because I got to be with my mum the last 4 months of her life. And it just shows you how quickly a situation changes in life. It goes from utter joy to utter sadness within like just times. It's just so bizarre. But in between looking after my mum, which I did full time, I would still draw, I would still illustrate, and I still freelanced for Red or Dead. And that's when I started also thinking about brands and what brands actually mean to people. It's really hard, isn't it? Because you sort of think about something like Dr. Martens, and everyone can wear Dr. Martens, but it's their personal style and the emotional attachment to a brand. And I got really interested about what is the emotional attachment that leads you to wearing a brand. The thing about Red or Dead was, as well, we were one of the first to actually turn the Dr. Martens boot, we shared offices with them, into a fashion wearable brand. And so that's when it sort of started, I started thinking about it. In 1996, Pentland bought Red or Dead. I became part of the acquisition. In those days, I still did everything by hand, and I didn't know how to work a computer or anything. So I had to learn very, very quickly. And I'd gone into this sort of Red or Dead freelance world of almost like quite chaotic in terms of the way I designed, into something that's really, really professional and really really just commercial, and it's about how you think about commercial projects. So yeah, I joined the Pentland team and I loved it, and obviously still love it. So when I started, I couldn't work the computer. I did everything by hand, but slowly started teaching myself. And with the help and the collaboration of all the other designers around me, was able to pick up quite quickly how I could almost mix my, I suppose, artistic drawing style with like computer, and actually started almost delivering better work in terms of I could do things faster, I could do things quicker, I could change the colors quicker. I loved the freedom that the Mac offered me. But I do think it's really important for you guys today to actually make sure that you're not driven by the Mac, that you're driven by your own creativity and your own design aesthetic, but the Mac is an enabler to that talent. So think about moments that matter, which I believe that I do at Pentland. It's all about the emotional connections to products. And I might not like some of the brands or like some of the aesthetic of the brands, but actually my job as the designer and creative lead is to make sure that I'm delivering for the consumer at all times. So it's not about me, it's about what the brand wants to deliver and the story that the brand wants to tell. So we need to make sure at all times that we have the right designers in the right place. We have specialists that enable us to make sure that we have products that work. We also need to make sure that we have the right margins so that we're able to deliver on the details and the trims and the aesthetic that actually make things special. So we have really interesting design teams. So one of the things that I'm really passionate about is supporting education, and hence doing stuff like this. And it's really important because I can just feel how frustrating it must be having these such unprecedented times forced upon you as a graduate, and not having a graduate show, not being able to actually, I suppose, have those conversations that you will be able to have with people like me face to face. But in many ways, maybe you wouldn't be able to have access to me and to all the other people that hopefully are helping you out at this time, because the time is so different now. The projects that we were working on have all gone into hibernation. So I work across lots of different universities, and I am a Cordwainer, which is the livery company set up for the footwear trade. I'm a Graduate Fashion Week mentor. I'm a supporter and advisor for new designers, and I absolutely love, because what I think it gives to our company is a fresh perspective, a new pair of eyes, and also you're able to take a different slant of things than I would. I'm also really passionate about grassroots, and I'm a trustee of something called the National Saturday Club. And the reason why I am passionate about this is because if you're from a BAME background or a council estate in Wolverhampton, how do you know that you can be part of this incredible industry? And so it's really important. Unless I had Frankie Fraser, I wouldn't have known. So I work on the National Saturday Club. We have primary school placements and work placements all coming into Pentland. So one of the things as well, which is really important to Pentland, is the design pool. It was set up in 2003 and it's for you guys. But again, you don't even have to have graduated. I've now got over 200 alumni, and it's basically you come into Pentland and you work across all different projects. That can be any brand, any project, but it almost harnesses your speciality and your specialism. And it's a design resource. It makes sure that we get fresh ideas into our brands, and it's about actually nurturing and developing and recruiting you guys. The contracts are for a year, and basically the hope always and the intention is actually you get a full-time position within Pentland. So I talked a little bit about alumni, and I think the other thing about having an alumni is you might come in design pool, you might work at Pentland for 5 years and then think, actually, you know what, it's time for me to move on. And there isn't always that career, you know, the next move in the career at Pentland at one place. So I always believe it's good to actually go and move on, because I'm always hopeful that one day you'll come back to me as a senior designer or as something else, or working on another brand. But the people that do come in the design pool actually end up staying with me. I suppose I'm their design mother, or I hope to think that that I was part of their start career, so that I would be part of their, you know, their whole career development. And so, as you can see, we've had designers like Gary Card, Paul Brooker, Chloe Slocum, all different designers that have come in and now at different companies, but I've stayed in contact with them. And also, you know, I think it's always great to have that conversation where you're honest with me, saying about, actually, you know, now's our time to move on, and for me to actually help you get to the next stage of your career. So one of the things that I've been really fortunate to do is environments, and my passion came from that when we started, actually, we built the Pentland. Stephen Rubin, who's our amazing owner, wanted to have an environment at our headquarters in Lakeside that actually really did meet the needs of the people. And so I was asked if I would work with the architects Rock Townsend to design that environment. Since then, I've gone on to design our Sunderland Workhouse active brands headquarters, which you can see there. Our Nottingham headquarters, our Hong Kong headquarters, our New York headquarters, and our Vietnamese headquarters. But I think it's really important about environments that actually you're able to feel you have that almost spiritual place where you can go and work, but actually it shows you the culture and the product. One of the things I'm missing so much with COVID is product and colour, and actually proper samples of stuff. So I can't wait to actually get back in the office. And charity and community, as I've talked about before, the National Saturday Club, but I also work with Incline Direct, Sorrel Foundation, Amy Winehouse Foundation, the Churchill Prize, I don't know if any of you have ever entered, and the Graduate Fashion Week Mentor. And again, it's just actually about being part of what you do and making sure that what you want as a young designer, as a graduate, is actually reflected back within our business. I suppose the other thing is actually about inspiring our creatives. A lot of our designers have been with us for a long time, and technology changes all the time. So how do we make sure that we collaborate as different brands and as different teams, and also learn new technology, new ways of doing it, how we become more sustainable. So quite often I'll organise a whole boot camp for our whole company, just to make sure that we're at the cutting edge of design, and just making sure that technology and the tools that we're working with are fit for purpose. One of the things that I got to work on 2 years ago was about emotional connections to the consumers. And it also comes in as part of this whole thing about environments. How do you actually inspire a customer to come into one of your environments, and actually not, especially on these days with technology and everything's online, that you actually, it's a cathedral where you can actually visit. So I worked with some Design Frontiers at Somerset House to actually come up with this whole cathedral product, and it celebrated all of the flat patterns that go into our active brands to make the 3D products. So again, that whole visiting and actually experiencing I suppose the thoughts behind the brand and the design aesthetic behind what we do. I've put some tips together for you. I don't know if they're going to be helpful, and I know that there's chat in the, if you've got any questions, then do feel free to ask me. But some people have asked me about tips for getting a job, and I think it's really important. The first thing is dress code. And the first thing is to be yourself. Think about the company that you're interviewing for. Don't just wear a suit because your mum told you to. I actually was speaking to a young designer this morning because she was confused about her CV, and she'd done this really amazing CV, but it didn't talk about her at all. It talked about everything that she thought it should talk about. Make it about you, you know, make sure that your piece of paper sums up what you do, and that I read it and go, oh, I really want to meet them. They sound like good fun, or they sound like they know what they're doing, or they, you know, don't make it just because someone's told you you should have a CV. I want you to be the most amazing person in my team. I want you to work with everyone else and inspire me. So don't just do a CV that's really boring. And when you show up, make sure you look like yourself and that you dress like yourself. Be really careful about over branding, in terms of if you're coming to see me, you don't have to wear a competitor brand. Research who's interviewing you and what the company does, just because it's really good to do your homework, and I might ask you a question about me or a question about one of our brands, and if you don't know the answer, I just thought, oh, I don't know if they really want to work here. I love seeing workings. I love seeing your drawings. I love seeing your sketches. I love seeing how you've got to that end idea. So don't just send me or show me loads of finished stuff. I don't want to see this finished stuff. I want to see your workings. I want to get inside your head. I want to actually know how you work, to see that you can be part of our team. It's really important to make sure as well that you're staying in touch with industry and exhibitions and cinema, and even if this COVID lockdown, you've watched every episode of whatever it may be, it's really important that there's you know, that you are going on designers blogs, that you have got your own Instagram account, that you are doing your own web page or something. Don't just sit waiting for people to come to you, because they're not going to come to you. You know, go to them. Make sure that you don't have any work in your portfolio that you don't like, because I can tell. I can really see when you're not proud of a project, and it's just the way your body language and the way you talk about it. So don't show work that you're not proud of. Be prepared. Check your travel route. Make sure that you have plenty of time. Aim to be 20 minutes early, just because it gives you breathing space. Don't just bring your laptop. You know, it's really lovely if you bring sketchbooks and anything else that you can show that you have stuff that enables your idea. Also, if you are bringing a laptop, your screen, because some of the screens that I've seen look like you've eaten your dinner off them. It's disgusting. Breathe and smile. You might be interviewing for a role that you don't really want, or that you really want, but actually the experience itself will only do you good. So make sure that you make a lasting impression. And also, you never know that I see you and you might not be right for our business, but remember, I've got 200 alumni that might have told me that they're looking for someone just like you. So make sure that you set a good impression. Apply early for placements. Now, all the placements this year have had to be cancelled because our offices aren't even open. So if it's a placement, make sure that you get in contact and that you write early. And we're probably going to have a backlog for next year, but it doesn't mean that we can't make it happen. If you're keen and that you want to work for us, make sure you write to us. Keep busy and inspired. This is certainly one for now. Enter competitions. Make sure that you're proactively looking out for stuff. ArtsFed's really good, and they're doing a designer graduate competition. Again, I'm a judge for, so enter it. What have you got to lose? If you believe that you're a really, really good designer, what have you got to lose? Just enter. Ensure that your CV packs a punch visually. It's all very well giving me a CV that's A4 piece of paper, but if it doesn't express anything about you, just even a little doodle or a little drawing of yourself or something that you like doing, make sure that it does pack a punch. This was my very first CV. Look at that. I don't know if you could get away with it now. But why not? Give it a go. And my last thing was, oh, I don't know where I've gone there now. Sorry. My finger slipped on my mouse pad. Hold on. Oh, I've gone right to the start. Bear with me. Okay. So here are just some thoughts for the future that I think are really important in your work and what to think about. So I think a lot of designers are thinking about actually taking stock of what they're doing and why they need to grow. If you think about all the businesses now that are actually grown so massive about this whole thing about making a profit and making a margin, and just thinking about actually, if you were just to stop for a minute and just think, do I need to make tons and tons and tons of money, or just enough to make our staff happy, support the team, and actually do things that are just innovative and culturally right for your brand and your team and your lifestyle, rather than every year setting yourself a new target to make more profit. And I think the companies that actually are really agile and do what they believe in and remain true to themselves and have just really are the being themselves and truly just keeping their own aesthetic and not trying to take over the world in every different, I think they're going to be the ones that really shine. Quarantine on consumption, getting used to living with fewer possessions and not traveling, make, do and mend. And I think I've been doing this. My sewing machine has been out non-stop. Haven't bought hardly anything over lockdown. Haven't needed it. So I just think as the virus disrupts our global supply chains, what does that mean for the designer? What can you do that's sustainable, that's innovative, that actually packs a punch, that actually makes a difference to society, that we would want to buy or that you would want to develop? Those best positioned for the future if they can survive the present. Maybe independent shops that are nimble, that can react fast to new trends and can make stuff very quickly on the spot, be really active and really sort of quite quick to market. I think they're the ones that actually are going to, again, make a difference. I think customers are going to be less inclined to go into massive shopping malls and actually everyone's got so used to now shopping online. I think people are looking for things that are different. When I first went in lockdown and I just wore active wear the whole time, and I was like, I can't wait to wear a dress. I actually just wear a dress now anyway, and not just the active wear. But I would like to see things that are really different and that are special and that have got magic and gold dust and not just about leisure wear. So what are the formal things that are really comfortable that you can bring to market really quickly, that are like round the shop corner or just online, but I can somehow make a difference by touching them, seeing them, or being inspired by them? Technology and digital innovation would definitely rule, and I think we've now advanced by 5 years in terms of robots, click collects, QR codes, showrooming, and next day delivery. I think there's going to be much more made of augmented reality and artificial intelligence and virtual tours, virtual sports, so much more in terms of contactless interfaces and interactions. But just think of the connections you've been able to make in terms of webinars and all these stuff that you can, the people that you can now actually get to via virtual interactions that you couldn't before, because people didn't have time. Now everyone's at home and the workload for many designers has gone down 30%. These are the times when you can make conversations with those people and start interacting with them. Find people that you have really like-minded product or design aesthetic with, and actually just start contacting them. What have you got to lose? Make better, make less, local, not global, fair wages and working conditions. Sustainability will rule the future. And I think one of the articles I was reading the other day is that Gucci Alexandro Michel recently announced that he was slowing down his fashion cycle and reducing the number of shows that he produces. And I think a lot of people are going genderless, and just think about how you can make an impact to all of the design world, because I am actually positive that you can. And I think that is it from me. Let me just look. Oh, any questions? Jo, I'm done. Did I go miles over?
Thank you, Kate. That was amazing. I see we've got questions popping in now, which is great. I think we've got time to definitely take some questions from the audience. So here we have, oh great, somebody from our Saturday club. Hi, Nyan, whose main interest is in garment design.
Right.
Done lots of designs but doesn't really know what to do with them. And I think the question is really about how to get heard and get their name out there, because I guess it's kind of different at the moment. You can't go and sit in somebody's car park and knock on the office door. So I think if you've got the advice for Nyan there, and it's great to, I think, ask that question at 16 as well, because you still have so much time to think about how you carve your path out.
Nyan, and it's lovely to meet you. Hello. And I'm glad that you are a National Saturday Club member, which is great. I actually think the whole thing about Instagram is a really good way of actually just showing what you do. And I think a lot of people like to see the process. So if you have got all these bits and you are interested in garment design, start just almost filming yourself, cutting them up and sort of getting your work out there. There's so many ways that you can share your work and post your work and actually start getting people loving what you do. More than my day, because I didn't have any of this technology. So I had to go and wait in car parks for a whole day for someone to come out. So yes, I could actually physically see them, but it was one person. You have the opportunity to get into thousands and thousands of people where I couldn't. So I do really think you need to actually just show people the work that you're doing, your design aesthetic, and start like even emailing people, like copying people on Instagram and linking yourself in and just showing people what you do. Film it. Be lovely to see. I'm happy to see it.
Thank you, Katie. And another one from Kiara, actually, which is about looking at portfolios and how many projects you might look to see in that portfolio. I mean, I know that's probably how long's a bit of string, but if you've got any advice about portfolios, that'd be very welcome.
As I said, I was looking through a designer's portfolio this morning, and she said, I'm just so confused. And I think she had 6 projects in there, 6 different projects. The projects are all really good, but what she hadn't done was she hadn't had start, middle and end. She just had 6 final projects, and that doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't tell me how you work, how you research trends, how you do mood boards, how you put your colours together, how you who are you designing for? What is the customer? What's the price point? So I think in terms of, it's all very well having 6 projects, but they need to have a start, middle and end. And I need to be able to get inside your head. I do love seeing fabric swatches, samples. I love seeing where people got their research from. I love seeing the ideation process from start to finish. It doesn't have to be all of that, but just to have a glimmer of it and knowing that you do that and that's how you work through. And also breadth. You know, if you've got a portfolio and it's all the same sort of thing, I would mix it up. I would have women's, children's, men's, perhaps do an accessory, perhaps do a little moving image. Mix it up so you've got different design aesthetic and that I can see that you are thinking about the whole picture and not just one piece of it. Does that help?
Thank you, Katie. And the question there's just come in about CVs, actually, and we've obviously seen your CV in a box. But I mean, I think what's interesting for the graduates is how to sort of adapt their CV for different audiences, really, because I think perhaps some companies like a more traditional CV and others not. What advice would you have on that?
So again, because it's something that I've done this morning, I do think that you should tailor your CV to different companies, but not lose sight of who you are. Because if you really want a job and you really want you know the design aesthetic you want to go for, you know the company you want, that like inspires you, then I think that you need to make sure that you are inspiring them. So if I got a CV through and it was just about I love graphic design, I want to be a graphic designer, it allows me to be creative, it doesn't tell me anything about you. And today when I was talking to this young lady about her CV, she was really good fun, she was great at slogans, she loved colour, all her graphics were really bold and bright, yet you would never know that in her CV. Now, some of those details, you don't need to make the big punchy, they don't need to make them punchy or stand out, but somehow in that piece of paper, you need to make sure that I get that you are that person, and that it's not just a generic CV that, quite frankly, I'll probably just shred because I'm bored. I don't want to be bored by your CV. I want to be excited by your CV. I want to go, do you know what? I want to get you in because you sound great. You sound like that you love our business. You want to work for us. You sound like you do lots of activities afterwards. You really engage with trends and colour and whatever it is you do. But you do need in your personal statement to actually say a bit about you that actually makes me get inside the person that you are. It doesn't have to be like my CV from the late early 80s, early 90s, but I do like to see something that's got a bit of colour, or that the layout's beautiful, that you thought about some of your drawings along the bottom, or something that I can just see something about you, because then I can get you in anyway, or meet on Zoom.
There's a great question there from Olivia, actually, which is, how did you build up the confidence to go out and find designers and start speaking to them? Because I think obviously that is often the biggest barrier.
I think it is the biggest barrier, and I'm really lucky that I'm from Essex and I'm cheeky, and I can imagine that someone that's quite shy, it'd be tricky. I think that's the other bit why I do the National Saturday Club, because I think you get to engage with designers at a very early age. I do think my question back to you is, what is the worst that can happen? Like if you were to speak to someone that you really admire, or that you're saying to them, I want to work for you, what is the worst they can say? The worst that they can say is no. And that is it. And I think when you think about all the stuff, all the conversations you have all the day, all the bits that like swipe left, swipe left, swipe left that you get now, no isn't that bad, And I think just be brave. Think about what you're saying. Think about what you're going to offer to them. But actually, at the end of the day, the worst that can happen is they say no, or come back to me later, or get in contact with me in 3 weeks, or yeah, why not? Let's have a conversation. I like your work. So in terms of how do you be that brave, I think you've got to think about what is the worst thing that can happen to me if I do. And it's not that bad, really.
I think that's great advice, Katie. Right, I think we have time for that one last question now, and then we'll probably have to wrap it up. But the question is, how important are platforms such as LinkedIn for talent scouting?
So do I go on LinkedIn to look at other talent? Not really. I don't. I go to your university. I go to probably 30 other universities in the UK. I do all your online stuff. I have a look at you. If people write to me, I'll have a look at your work. I don't really go on LinkedIn, but that's because I do go on it, but I go to see more about my industry peers rather than to see you guys or to see talent. I'd much rather look on Instagram. I'd much rather read an article, in a design mag, or I probably don't use I don't use LinkedIn as my way to you guys. I do think it's important to get a presence on there, and I do think it's important to, comment. But for me, it's not my be all and end all. I use it more for industry peers and knowledge.
Thank you. I'm sorry, everybody, but I think we're going to have to wrap up the event now. But I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's joined us, but of course, a special thank you to Katie for sharing her story with us. It's been great, and she's offered
Thanks,
such
Jo.
good advice.
Everyone, thanks for all your questions.
Yeah, no, it's been fabulous. Thank you so much, Katie. And I hope to see some of you tomorrow at the events, the last two events tomorrow before we close the series this week. But big thank you to Katie, and have a good night, everybody.
Thanks. Good night.